the topic that we are going to discuss today is the scientific approach behind the lifestyle of Raja Yoga meditation practitioners. We have with us today again Dr. Ajay Kumar Nair. Before I introduce Dr. Ajay Kumar, let me also introduce the series and why we are doing the series first, and then we can get into the introductions for Dr. Ajay and for me. So, PsychTalks for Meditation is a series that we have initiated as a result of a collaboration between ICHARS Support Foundation and the Spark Wing of Brahma Kumaris. The idea is to be able to highlight certain researches which have happened in the area of mental health, meditations, and how meditations affects mental health, and then encourage more and more people to focus on their own mental health, both through self-work, meditation, and also by connecting with practitioners as and when they need to. ICHARS Support Foundation as an organization is a non-profit organization which focuses on helping people make the best out of their life by improving their mental health. We do this by offering multiple workshops, by connecting with NGOs, training people in NGOs to work with their beneficiaries as far as mental health is concerned, and through other activities like the live talks that we are having right now. I would like to welcome Dr. Ajay Kumar once again for this episode and for being here, for helping us, guiding us, and supporting us in this journey that we have undertaken. Quickly to introduce Dr. Ajay Kumar. He is a Postdoctoral Research Associate at the Center for Healthy Minds. He is interested in multidisciplinary approaches to understand consciousness and well-being in health and disease. He is currently working with one of the best researchers, Richard Davidson. His neuroscience research work over the past 10 years has involved meditation participants from Brahma Kumaris Rajayoga, Vipassana, Heartfulness traditions. His current research is on the adverse effects of chronic inflammatory diseases such as asthma on brain health. Prior to his research career, he worked for 17 years in the information technology domain. He has had an active meditation practice for 20 years with Brahma Kumaris, which led to his interest in carrying out research on consciousness and well-being. Welcome, Dr. Ajay.
Thank you.
Glad to have you back today for this episode.
Happy to be here. And really appreciate the great work that you and your team are doing. It's very important work. Thank you.
Thank you. And also just a brief information that I want to give all of you, that while I am here, Dr. Ajay is here talking about these topics. Remember, our work is kind of easier. The more difficult work is for the people who are doing the back-end work in organizing, arranging, and ensuring that we are able to reach out to more and more people. So especially thank you, Shreya, and everyone else at ICHARS and at Spark Wing of Brahma Kumaris who have helped us and guided us in ensuring that this series can take off and it continues flying.
And perhaps another aspect is there's a ton of people behind any research as well. You know, the number of people involved in making a research possible is also huge. Especially the study that we're going to talk about has involved a tremendous amount of people and coordination and logistics, both from Brahma Kumaris and from the research community. So this is just the tip of the iceberg, as they say, you know, very, but yeah, we get to share. That's our privilege, I suppose.
So we are thankful to all of these people, because without them, these series would not be possible, right? And we are also thankful to all the audience who is watching us currently, because without all of you, whatever we are doing is really not the idea is to reach out to more and more people. So thank you. While we are going through this discussion, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask us. We will be more than happy to take up those questions and address them during the course of this discussion. So Dr. Ajay, let's start with the topic for today. Could you give us a brief context about this survey study and what was the objective of doing this study?
Sure. Actually, this is a combination of two studies, really. One is a fairly large study. We had over 1,000 participants for that, and it was a national sample. So the goal there was to understand, there are many factors related to well-being, and one question that had been behind my thinking for a while was how, usually when people do research, they look at how many years you've been practicing something, how many hours of meditation do you do per day, and how long you've been doing that. And that's been the focus of most of meditation research. So one of the things I was very keen to understand is it's not just the quantity of meditation in terms of the number of hours you practice, but the quality. How good are you at meditation? How deeply do you go, and so on. So that's been one driving question. So the first part of this in the paper, what we have mentioned, the first part is to do with understanding proficiency of of meditation practice. In this particular case, we had a specific questionnaire trying to understand practice proficiency in Rajyoga specifically, and this is as per the Brahma Kumaris tradition. And this is going to be different for different traditions. If you're looking at Vipassana or Heartfulness, each of them would have their own way of doing, because each tradition has their own context and what they feel is important. And in Rajyoga, there are different subjects. So we'll talk about that in detail later. But the idea was to understand in detail what is the proficiency in Rajyoga. And the second thing is, most people talk about well-being as a static measure. There are some standard questionnaires that are there internationally, so which are well validated. But no one really talks about progress in well-being related to the meditation practice, right? So you come into meditation practice with some particular state of mind, and then you start your practice, and with that, you tend to have a sense of, this is how I'm progressing. So what is the subjective sense of progress, and what are the dimensions of these? These are all questions that we wanted to address in the first study. It's fairly novel, and it's a large sample, about 1,000 people, so nationally representative actually. And the second study is more focused. We talked in the first episode, one of the earlier episodes, about just a minute meditation, right? So we were looking at long-term practitioners, short-term meditators, and non-meditators, and comparing them. So we wanted to understand what's the proficiency, progress in well-being in these people, as well as looking at standard psychological questionnaires, to do with subjective well-being, psychological well-being. There's a number of parameters like that. How satisfied are you, and so on. So the second study is more focused, very tightly controlled in terms of matching of age and so on. And we want to control, is this sense of well-being that the meditators have, how different is it from the normal population who doesn't meditate? Because if you're saying there is a progress in well-being, is it progress because there were challenges before and you're overcoming them, or is it going above and beyond that into a sense of flourishing? So that's the driving questions behind the study.
That's actually very good, because this has been one of the questions that I've had from a lot of people over the years, that, all right, so we start focusing on ourselves and we start loving ourselves and we start meditating, but eventually it's a feel good factor which lasts only for a few minutes, right? Is it really worth doing it? So for all of you, one of the reasons why we are focusing on these researches and these studies is because we want to talk about the long term benefits that people get. It's not just about me sitting and observing my breath for few moments and feeling relaxed and calmer. It's also about the long term benefits and the impacts that you receive as a part of your life, right?
Yeah.
Which reminds me, before we go ahead and I ask the next question, we are talking about meditations, we're talking about mindfulness, we're talking about different things related to how you can manage your mental health. So one of the things that we want to do is help all of you bring your focus, your awareness to what's happening in the present. So what I'm going to do is, at different times during this discussion, I'm just going to ask all of you to bring your focus on your breath and observe your breath for 3 rounds. And then we will go to the next round of questions. The idea is that, yes, you're getting a lot of information, you're learning a lot of things, but your mind needs some space to be able to assimilate this information, to be able to process this information, and also for you to learn to be able to Just be present to what's happening with you right now. So we hope to be able to achieve both. So before I go to the next question, Dr. Ajay, I'm just taking like 10 seconds so that we
Sure.
can be quiet. And I just want the two of us and everyone else who's listening to us to just observe your breath for 3 rounds so that we can then proceed after that.
Sounds good.
So, Dr. Ajay, this was a nice trick that was taught to me by someone, and they told me that Nitin, when you ask people to observe their breath, even if they don't want to observe their breath, the moment you've spoken about it, their awareness goes to the breath. So, whether they like it or not, even if they attempt not to observe their breath, in that attempt, they end up observing their breath, which is a nice bind to put people in at times. All right, perfect. So, going ahead with what we were discussing, could you define proficiency and well-being in detail, and how did you measure this aspect or these aspects?
Sure. Yeah. Um, yeah. Proficiency in any task is basically how good you are at it, right? And in Rajyoga, the context of this paper, there are 4 subjects that are being taught. So these are knowledge, which is because Rajyoga is a very conceptually driven tradition. And so there are a number of things about life, about the self, about nature, about God, about time. There are many, many aspects that are covered. So one is understanding and depth of clarity and conviction about the conceptual part. The second is yoga, or a set of meditations, and there are many forms of meditation in the Brahma Kumaris tradition. It starts with the soul consciousness um, uh, type, which we talked about in our earlier episode, the Just a Minute meditation, where we discussed that the participants had practiced this soul conscious meditation. So, but there are a number of them, and we covered 6 of them in this particular study. The third topic is about inculcation of virtues. How virtuous, for example, there's a number of items in the Brahma Kumaris in their viewpoint, which is about, for example, celibacy, about having pure food, about harmony in relationships. These are important, principles of life, and the desire to be having harmonious relationships for everyone, and to make the world a better place. So there's a big impact of having a virtuous life. And the fourth subject that is studied is about service. And service is not, just about charity or something, but it's in thoughts and words and deeds. There's many dimensions that are studied in the Brahma Kumaris. So what we did is had a questionnaire where a 25-item questionnaire, which was dedicated to understanding proficiency in all these aspects. And so you would score that from 0 to 100, understanding if someone was basically a newbie, not understanding anything at all or having any practice, to someone who is really a master in every dimension, um, which is a fairly ambitious goal, to be honest. So proficiency was very specifically operationalized with these questions in mind in this questionnaire. Well-being, we had 2 aspects in the study. One was to do with progress in well-being, which is trying to understand with respect to before they started the meditation practice, because this is a cross-sectional study, right? So we are not looking longitudinally across time, so we do not have that luxury. So, but what we could ask people is, well, think of a time before you started your meditation practice, and how was your mental state then, and if you were to compare across these 8 parameters, which is happiness and peace and work effectiveness and so on, then how would you rate yourself? Have you progressed? Was it excellent progress? Was it perhaps no progress at all? Or maybe it deteriorated, and has because of various factors. Some could be to do with things that are just outside life things, right? A close one dies, or something else happens, or health conditions. Or has it specifically deteriorated because of Rajyogas? Because you're starting something ambitious, you're trying to do self-change, and self-change usually, is not comfortable for those who are around you. Because if you're changing dramatically and you're trying to have new principles, new ideas, not everyone would look at it in the same way. So we asked that question as well. And we were trying to understand progress in well-being from that stand, right? And the third angle on well-being was trying to understand well-being from a standard psychological sense, right? Which is what's usually found in the literature. And these are things like, what's your sense of positivity, sense of negativity, life satisfaction, regard for life, how do you look at life in general, what's the quality of life. So there are a number of parameters that we examined, really. So I hope that answers the question somewhere.
Perfect. Actually, one of the things that you mentioned is quite interesting, because we were just discussing that in one of the workshops today, that when you begin to change, at times the change is good for you, but for people around you, it's a difficult thing to digest.
Right.
All of a sudden, whatever they have planned, however they were working with you, all of that goes for a toss, because now you are a different person from what they are expected to interact with.
Right. Yeah.
So, in case you are in that situation where you're exploring something new, you're learning something new, you're practicing a particular meditation, or you're noticing a positive change in your life, but people around you are taking time to adjust to it, it's okay, this shall pass. They will adjust to it, and sometimes sooner or later, once you are able to maintain this new state for a slightly longer period of time. So just keep this in mind, because there are times when people fall back to their old behaviors simply because the environment is going in a bit of a turmoil and they don't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
So it's important to keep this in mind.
Yeah, I might want to add that it's also important to be compassionate to others, because sometimes the quest for compassion for self, and sometimes knowing that, well, I found the right way, and if someone else wants to be on it, great, otherwise not. Sometimes when someone starts a new process of change, it can be difficult for others, and so to acknowledge that, if we are aware as we start, then we have a more, a better way of tackling that change.
Perfect. Brilliant.
Some of
So
this is
moving
hindsight knowledge, by the way, because you
I
learn
know, I
after
know.
you've gone through that. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's good that at least at this point you're able to share it with people, because if they've not gone through it, at least they can learn through that experience and ensure that they are not, for the lack of any other words, making the same mistakes that probably you may have or we may have made earlier.
Right.
So, moving to the next question, can you explain some of the elements of spiritual lifestyle which were explored to measure the proficiency?
Sure. There are a number of factors, really. So, for example, I think all the cardinal principles of Brahma Kumaris Rajayoga were covered. So, so there's some aspects which are related to the specifically related only to lifestyle, and this could be, for example, um, celibacy, which is a very important principle in Brahma Kumaris, or the focus on pure food. And pure food is a very nuanced, and it's not easy for most people to understand. It is that food is prepared in a way which is, it's vegetarian, that's a starting point, but it's also prepared in a spiritual attitude, and it's consumed in a spiritual attitude. So that's not something that is usually considered. It's quite nuanced. So that's something. The dedication on inculcation of virtues, what is called dharana, how to adopt those things in one's own life, and to avoid vices, and these are a whole range, and they're well described in the Brahma Kumaris literature. And these would be as common as, anger and lust and ego and so on. So they are well understood. But the important aspect in the Rajyoga lifestyle is there's a lot of emphasis on being rather than just knowing, right? So the conceptual knowledge is one part, but the yoga aspect is about being, embodying those principles. And the third is to express those qualities, which is the dharana and lifestyle aspect. So one of the aspects, for example, is how to track how you're doing on a daily basis. So there's a element of journaling, and people write down on a daily basis how they're doing on all these different parameters. And some people have very descriptive and detailed journals. It's called chart. And some people have a fairly summary way of doing it. But there's a number of things like that. And these were all assessed in terms of proficiency.
Perfect. So Vitalaji has just asked a question about research paper. So I will be sharing the link to the research paper before the end of this particular episode, and you will be able to access it directly through the comments in the YouTube itself. Okay, in case
Also, it's a open access paper, so it's free. You can download the PDF from that link also.
perfect, brilliant. And in case you still need some help and you're not able to do that, then please feel free to get in touch with me, and I'll be more than happy to help you and support you on that. Okay, so the next question. Would you also be able to help us understand how we can implement some of these things as a part of our practical lives?
Sure. Actually, a number of these things are directly useful for any person, even if they haven't fully understood the Brahma Kumaris approach. Though that would be highly encouraged. If someone wants to understand and practice, it's a very detailed understanding is available with the Brahma Kumaris approach. So if someone wants to really practice and go in depth, there's tons of material, and it's freely available at the at any of the meditation centers. But that said, I think the starting point is self-awareness, the willingness to take some time to consider where we are in our place in the universe. How do we interact with others? We are sort of like a passengers on a journey. We are together for a short while, and it's going to end. This current life as we know it. So what is this life? How do we look at it? How do we make this journey pleasant? It's something like when you're on a journey together, then you want to be having a pleasant time with whoever your companions are. And so what are these things that can make it easier? Is there, so there are routines that you can follow in terms of early to bed, early to rise, thinking about not just yourself and your work, but about God, about nature, about whatever you feel comfortable about exploring, but beyond yourself. So just that sense of knowing that it's not all about you, it's about how you interact with the world and how others are going through their journeys, and that not all journeys are very comfortable. People might be having their own challenges. So in a sense, there is both some time to think about your own uniqueness in the world, and also your own commonness with the rest of the world, right? How you're basically just like anyone else, going through the same situations, the same. So if you're having some challenges internally, mentally, physically, most people do, and or will do at some point in life. And if you have some unique, special offerings and qualities that you can bring to the world, every person has. And so to cultivate the sense of respect and harmony, there's a number of beautiful things that we can learn from the Brahma Kumaris approach. But I would suggest that the greatest thing that I have appreciated in this tradition is the attitude of being a student throughout life, to be constantly willing to learn, to introspect, to understand how we are doing, to wanting to constantly improve. I think that's a beautiful trait, really. So those are things that anyone can adopt and learn from.
So it's actually brilliant in terms of being able to see how we are both unique, and yet there is nothing unique about us. And it's
Yeah,
that contradiction that is probably the most beautiful aspect of what we call as life, right?
absolutely.
And this is for all of you. So when you think, what do you do to be able to probably initiate yourself on this journey, right? So the question that I ask myself, generally speaking, is this: what is the most constructive way in which I can pass my time, which will benefit most people around me? So because I call it pass my time, it still doesn't become like a very heavy thing that I'm doing. At the same time, I'm looking at the most constructive way of being able to pass my time so that it benefits me and benefits people around me, and even people probably that I don't know. But the more people the benefit can reach out to, the better it is.
Yeah. And I think if you look at the 4 subjects that the Brahma Kumaris teach, I think that's a beautiful framework in itself. So one is to try and understand what life is about for oneself and in general. The second is not just being a human doing, just do things, but to be, to embody qualities, and then the third is to express those qualities rather than just being a person with many qualities, but to express them in life, to engage with life, to, meet challenges head on and contribute in some way. And the fourth is the attitude of being a server, that my life is not about me, it's about how can I be useful. And I think that's a beautiful way of looking at life.
Perfect. Brilliant. I hope all of you are watching right now, are enjoying the conversation, the discussion, how you can apply some of these aspects in your day-to-day life. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and we would be more than happy to address those questions as we are going ahead. Okay. So the next one that I have for you, Dr. Ajay, is, could you share your outcome of this research and comment on the contribution to spiritual lifetime on the results, spiritual lifestyle on the result?
Sure. I think this was a very exciting piece of work for me. It took a long time to come to fruition, but there were 2 studies, right? So the first part, I think the hugely significant result was that proficiency of practice is way more important than duration of practice in terms of your progress in well-being. So that predicts, it's highly correlated with progress in well-being. So if you are very good at what you're doing, that's far more important than having spent many years and decades doing some sort of practice. So if you practice something for a long time, you do improve. And so there is a correlation there, but that improvement is much smaller than the improvement that you get with deliberate practice, understanding and going systematically. And what that I find that remarkable is because it encourages a new beginner. You don't need to have had a lifetime of practice before you start to see benefits. And so the first question that we had asked was about, is which is more important for progress and well-being? Is it proficiency of practice and duration? And the answer is overwhelmingly proficiency. So when we then compared those who had long-term proficient practice, short-term proficient practice, and non-meditators, the question there was, is the kind of well-being that people have, is it different than those who are non-meditators, first of all? And the answer is yes. Both meditation groups had significantly better well-being outcomes across a range of parameters than the non-meditators. However, what was very surprising to me was that there was very little difference between the two groups of meditators. So the long-term meditators who were proficient and the short-term meditators who were also proficient were fairly similar in terms of their well-being outcome. And that was very surprising to me. And how to navigate this is, we have to look at the context of what happens as we continue to practice? So does that mean that you just have to practice for 6 months and after that you don't have to? No, that's not the case at all. So the well-being in a short-term meditator is effortful. You're aware that this is how I want to be, and then you make those changes, and you're able to achieve these sense of well-being in terms of meaning, purpose, joy, peace, and so on. And especially the contrast between your a non-meditating life and your life of meditation is huge. So that's where this initial boost comes. But to sustain it, it becomes more and more effortless. And so, if you remember our conversation previously about the just a minute meditation, to be able to bring about changes in our state effortlessly, you do need long-term practice. And that's a very important thing, because you don't always have the luxury of being able to sit quietly in a corner when there are no challenges and then develop your sense of well-being. Sometimes you're challenged in life, and so to be able to quickly get back to composure and calmness, that's something that can come with long-term practice. So I think both aspects are important, but the highly encouraging thing is it doesn't take a long time to rapidly progress in well-being. That's one of the outcomes.
All right, perfect. Um, okay, so before we go ahead, I need all of you again to just observe your breath for 3 more rounds, right? In through your nose, out through your nose, and just keep your awareness on your nose while you're inhaling and exhaling. Just see if you can be present to your breath. And while you're present to your breath, if you have certain thoughts running in your mind, that's completely okay. You can have those thoughts in your mind and yet be observant and mindful of your thoughts. Perfecto. I hope all of these pauses, while we are taking these pauses, you're actually making use of them. You're doing the breath work, the observation of the breath along with us, simply because it's just small, small steps, but they can get you started on your journey. And then obviously, there is more and a lot more that you can do beyond this. So, Dr. Ajay, there are a couple of questions. Should I take those questions up right now? Would that be okay?
Sure, that's fine.
So, Rashmi has asked, what is the difference between Rajyogas and PLC Atma knowledge and other methods of meditation?
I'm not sure what PLC is, but yeah. So actually, our study is not about trying to compare the different knowledge aspects or conceptual backgrounds of different people, because we are specifically studying what is happening within this tradition, and it's not about the concept of what is the soul or and so on, but in brief, the people have different traditions have very different conceptions of what is there a soul. If there is a soul, what is the soul like, what are the qualities. So Rajyoga has some specific notions about what are the fundamental qualities of the soul, and it's considered to be immortal, permanent, yet it is subject to change, which is unlike some traditions where people believe that the soul doesn't change at all. It's just detached and as a witness. So there are many different differences and similarities, I suppose, between different groups. And there are many traditions of meditation which do not believe in the soul at all and say that this is just an illusion. And so I cannot really comment on those differences. That's an entirely different topic and not what was pertinent to our research. But I would encourage you, if you want to understand more, to visit one of the meditation centers and learn how you can ask in detail. And these are all free courses, so you're more there's nothing to lose. If you're interested, I think you should definitely pursue that.
Perfect. And also, different schools of thoughts, different organizations will obviously have their own ways of looking at certain things. Um, in Raja Yoga, when you're looking at Atma and soul, there's one that's one school of thought. I'm sure there are other schools of thoughts. It's again not necessary that only because you're following one aspect of a practice, you need to completely agree with every aspect of those practice. There are times when you can pick and choose those aspects of the practice that completely works for you and at least benefit from that. So don't be under this illusion that I have to, it's either all or nothing. There are places where you may probably want to have selective understanding of what you agree with and then at least benefit from that.
Yeah, but I would also add there that, you know, the person who stands to gain the maximum is the one who has conviction, right? So a person who is half-hearted and trying something a bit, sort of dabbling in something, obviously that person cannot become very proficient in that, right? And if you don't become very proficient, you know, the gains are little. So whatever tradition you go, if you understand what the conception is, practice that sincerely, you would try, it's worth doing something if you understand the value of why you're doing it, and also it relates to you, right? So if you choose something and that works well with you, go in depth, right? That would be my suggestion, and because that's where you can master that, and when you master, the gains are tremendous.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So that's actually a good idea. So the idea is in order to get started, you don't necessarily need to
Right.
agree with everything. At least get started and then see and decide if that works for you. If that works for
Yeah.
you, then the deeper you go, the more you benefit from it. Right?
Absolutely.
Uh, the next question that we have is, have you taken into consideration if someone was doing meditation of other type before Raj Yoga meditation?
Absolutely, yeah. So I talked about two studies, right? So the first study was a national sample, and in that case, it was not just possible to, exclude anyone who is doing other meditations and so on. So that was just looking at, when you look at 1,000 people, you just get whatever you get, and we don't know what the differences are. But and is that attributable to any other kind of practice? But the second study, which is the long-term meditators, short-term meditators, and non-meditators, we excluded anyone who had any lifetime practice of any other form of meditation. So, for example, there was a very senior meditator who had come, and during our conversation, we figured out that he had been practicing 25 years ago another form of meditation, and he felt that that was not relevant, and that's why he had mentioned that he had not practiced anything. But we had to exclude that data because of that, and even from our EEG study we had to exclude that data. So we were pretty stringent about excluding, because we do not know how these contributions work. So we really wanted to understand the contribution of the Rajyoga from Brahma Kumaris tradition rather than anything else.
That I hope that answers your question, Santlalji. If you have any questions, follow up to this, please let me know and we would take those questions up. All right. Let me see if there's anything else before I ask my question to you. I think we are good till here. So the next question that I have for you is, overall, how does this study, in your understanding, contribute to the field of meditation research?
Yeah, I think it does make a very solid contribution, and the reason I feel that way is typically most meditation research happens, as I alluded to earlier, in the context of how many hours someone has practiced. And so someone who has practiced for a long time is considered to be an expert, and someone who is new is considered to be a novice, and so on. What the study shows is that need not be the case, and I think you would relate to it in your own life. If you do something casually for a long time, that doesn't mean you're an expert in that, right? But if you learn something systematically and deeply, you can pretty quickly gain expertise, but to make that expertise sustainable, you would need longer practice. So what I think this study contributes first is to distinguish between proficiency and duration of practice in terms of calling someone an expert practitioner. Also, many studies, they feel that if someone has meditated for 2 months or 3 months, then that person is already an expert meditator compared to anyone who's not meditated. In the Brahma Kumaris, where people are used to 30, 40, 50 years of meditation, they feel very puzzled by looking at a paper where they say 2 months of meditation as an expert, right? So that it's complicated. A lot of research is quite complicated because of that, but it's useful if we can identify both proficiency and duration of practice in a study and understand what is really driving the changes that are happening, because these changes can happen in the brain in terms of how our different parts of the brain are connected together, in terms of our emotional state, in terms of our peripheral biology, in terms of there are many levels of at which meditation changes oneself, both mind, body, and our attitude, behavior towards others. So that's one angle. The second contribution I think we make is to understand how progress in well-being is an important construct. So if we just look at meditation as such, it could be that that the meditator who is having a lot of high well-being now might have had a high well-being before they started meditation. Maybe only those who are very happy and peaceful want to know more and do meditation, whereas those who are highly stressed don't have the time to meditate properly in the first place, right? So it could be that. So what we wanted to do is not look at it as things are, but also look at progress from before their start in practice. Many studies try to tackle this problem by doing, say, a 6-week or 8-week course and doing a before meditation, after meditation kind of a comparison. But that's not really very effective, because you're talking about someone who wants to practice for 30 years, for their whole life. So what happens to them? You can't really do these kind of longitudinal studies for them, right? So so that's the contribution I think the study also tries to make about progress in well-being. It's still a work in progress. I think there's lots more that can be done, but that's I believe our contribution.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing about both meditation and research, that there's really no end to it. You can keep doing this, keep benefiting from it, and well, there will always be more that can be done.
Right, absolutely.
All right. And my last question for you, as it is a survey-based research, did you face any limitations in your data collection, like segregation of long-term meditators, or any other process of the entire research that you felt was there were certain limitations that you had to go through? And just before you answer that, Dr. Ajay, I have made a note of the questions that are there in the comments by Shivani and by others, and we would take those questions up in a moment or so after Dr. Ajay has answered this question.
Sure. So your question is about challenges during, getting the participant sample, who are recruited. And I must say, I was extremely fortunate because of the sheer number of, people from the Brahma Kumaris and from Spark specifically who've helped in this process, because I cannot begin to name the number of people who were involved, and I'm extremely grateful for that. And so what happened is I had specified that these are the exclusion inclusion criteria, and the brothers and sisters at the meditation centers, they did all the legwork trying to understand, is this person really meeting the criteria, because they have a first-hand knowledge of who's participating as well. And so after all that screening, then I would do a follow-up screen to make sure that all the basic things are covered as well. So it was very easy for me, in contrast to what most researchers would face, to be honest. So I did not have difficulties in getting the sample for the second study. For the first study also, Spark, Brother Shrikant was instrumental in contributing at the national level. And there were a number of people in Bangalore, in different meditation centers, in Chennai, in Trivandrum. I traveled to many places to get this data, but that was just, no effort at all. The real effort was by the people there, organizing these meetings, having thousands of people come together, hundreds of people come together, and then fill up these forms. There were translations, also instructions to make sure people fill up authentically, do not inflate those things, because meditators generally are a very honest group. They want to improve, and so it was a fairly easy task for that to happen, because the idea was, it was all done in a way to promote introspection, to understand where we are on our journey. So I would say I was blessed to have a fairly easy research agenda.
Perfect. So for those of you who are into research, at times when you are deciding a target audience, and if you keep the target audience too niche, there is a fear that whether we will get the kind of people that we want or not. But
Yeah.
when you keep it too niche, you also may actually find it easier because you have a very well-defined audience that you are working with, right?
Right.
So before we end, a couple of questions I think that are there. So or comments that are there. So Manojji has said that I'm practicing meditation since 12 years. 6 years ago, I was disturbed during special meditation while offering Bhoj by someone. From that time, I couldn't concentrate as usual. Would you like to comment on this, Dr. Ajay?
Yeah, I think this is best addressed by a meditation teacher at the center the person is going, Manojji is going towards. And they would be best positioned to understand what the details of the situation are and if something can be done there. Yeah, I think that would be best.
Perfect. And also, Manojji, if you're looking at not being able to concentrate, while obviously what you have mentioned can be a big contributing factor to that, there could be other contributory factors that you may or may not be aware of right now. If you are going to a meditation center, then please connect with your meditation teacher and someone over there who will be able to help you and guide you. If not, probably connect with a practitioner or a therapist who will be able to guide you in terms of how you can proceed from here. Working with concentration is quite doable and it's not that difficult. There are multiple ways of being able to work with this.
Yeah, I think what Manoj is probably referring to is they had a challenging situation during a special meditation, and whoever is going to address that needs to have more context. And so, if usually the center brothers and sisters are very supportive, and so it would be useful to check base with them. That's what I would suggest.
Perfect. Brilliant. Then there's another comment by Santlal, and he has mentioned that I think in the second study, short time Rajyoga meditators having long time meditations of other types should be separated out.
Yeah, actually, as I alluded to, we did not have any person with meditation experience of any other kind across their whole life. So, if someone had practiced ever, whether they are a short-term meditator or a long-term meditator or a non-meditator, if they've had, for example, they've taken a course some time back and they never really practiced it, but we excluded all of them. So any lifetime practice of any other form of meditation was excluded. So these were only Rajyoga or not.
Perfect. Vittal G has asked, what value addition you suggest or the new points you would like to bring before audience which have not attended so far to make Raj Yoga meditation more effective?
Yeah, I think Rajyoga meditation is pretty effective. I think the challenge is in how well we adopt or practice, right? And so I think the beauty of the framework is that you start by trying to understand the concept, because if conceptual understanding is not good, then practice is usually not very effective. And so if there is a challenge or if someone wants to improve, I think the starting place is building the foundation to understand the nuance. So for example, there's a notion of the tree, in the Brahma Kumaris. So what does the tree of life mean, and what does it mean? What are the different branches represent? How am I related to everyone else? And this is to do with how the tree of life of all of humanity is, right? And a deep understanding there would have tremendous benefits in bringing harmony, right? And also being loving when connecting to others. So having to be able to repeat a point is one level of understanding, but to be able to ingrain and live through that is a very different level. So to start there, then to practice meditation systematically, and to see if somewhere there is a stuckness, then what can we do to alleviate that? How can I go, the idea is not to do a lot. The idea is to do well, and to have developed quality. I think that's a very important thing. And then to live that, because the more we live, express these qualities in our life, it becomes much easier. So for example, when we respect others, then our self-respect grows also, and it's kind of counterintuitive sometimes, but when self-respect grows also, you start respecting others. And so it builds on each other, and service definitely is very helpful in this. So having a balance across all these four subjects, developing across all of them, I think these are important ways in which one's own journey of Rajyoga meditation can be more effective.
Perfect, brilliant. And then there is one question by Shivani. I think the crux of the question is that there are certain people who think negative, and how can we guide them and help them to be able to become more positive?
Right. Yeah, I think it's true. Whatever thoughts we have during our daily life, that's what tends to surface during the meditation. Because in meditation, what you're doing is moving from just being busy and engaged in your own life into quietness. And when you become quiet, suddenly all the things that you were avoiding by just running around things suddenly start surfacing, and that can be quite unpleasant if you're not sure of what's happening, especially for a newcomer. But the important thing is to understand that this is you, right? And to accept whatever it is, and then to try to look through that, and to see what is it that is driving all this discomfort, and to understand that we have those things which are challenging, but there are many beautiful and positive qualities in us. And a remarkably effective way of thinking about it is, whatever you express is also what you experience. So if you express gratitude, you start experiencing more of that. If you start helping others, you start feeling helped, right? And so kindness, compassion, these all work both ways. Whatever you give others, you also get, and that's very, very powerful. And so to acknowledge that while we have negativity inside, everyone has, there's no one who is perfect. We all have positivity also, and it's an opportunity for us to develop more of those. And that's and I think this is an internal journey. For us to teach another person how to become more positive is usually not a very effective thing, but we can definitely change ourselves.
Okay. And Shivani, just to add on to this, couple of things. When we talk about positive and negative and changing thoughts and so on, there are a lot of processes that are available that you can use, that can be structured, that can really help you understand your present thoughts and also help you change the thoughts that you have. Uh, One small activity that I generally tell most of the clients that I'm working with is create a gratitude list where every day you just add one item to the list that you have gratitude for today. And it could be anything. Believe me, I have had people coming and telling me I have gratitude for Uber because I'm now able to travel without having to buy a car of my own. So there are so many small things in our life that we take for granted, that we don't even observe. And because we are not observing them, we are focusing more on the things that are not working for us. The moment you start observing on these small things, you'll realize there's so much that you can actually do and that you can actually be thankful for. And the moment those ideas start taking shape in your mind, it's almost a natural transition to move towards positive, because there is so much that you can be thankful about in your life, right? And the kind of things that I've heard from people eventually over a period of time in terms of what are those small things that they're thankful about is both, in a way it's funny, but in a way it's remarkable, because you realize when you start being grateful, what all can you be grateful about? And there's so much to be grateful about, right? And as far as the techniques are concerned, I think there are a lot of techniques that probably we are at the last 4 5 minutes, and that is not enough for us to be able to explain to you those techniques. I'm sharing a link to a YouTube video that we had recorded, I think, some time back, which specifically talks about working with thoughts and restructuring thoughts. How you can understand the thoughts that you have. Are thoughts really negative? How do you move from a thought that is hindering you into a thought that is kind of supporting you into taking the kind of actions that you would like to take, right? Whenever you have the time, my suggestion, go through those videos, that video. I think that should give you a clear enough idea of how you can move towards helping yourself or helping someone else uh, move more towards functional thinking. Also, Manojji, when you have shared your query and you have mentioned that you've met or you've tried working with concentration by connecting with other people, this video may also be useful for you. Maybe this will be a starting place. After this, if you feel that you're still looking at speaking to someone in more detail who can help you and support you, then please feel free to connect with me and we can see how we can take it forward from there. Right? So I've shared the link in the comments. Please check out the link. That particular link represents the process that you can use to restructure your thoughts. Okay. Uh, Dr. Ajay, we are more or less reaching the end of the show. We are almost on the 1 hour mark. Anything else that you would like to add in the end before we end?
Yeah, I think to do with the previous question that someone had asked, I think one line that I had particularly enjoyed, which is, wherever attention goes, energy flows, and so the more you pay attention to, it depends on where you focus your energy. So if you focus it more on we have all aspects in our personality. Wherever we want to improve or enhance, if we put more energy there, more attention there, I think we will progress there. That said, I think overall, what I would say is any journey that a person makes, a self-aware life of wanting to make a contribution, is a beautiful life. And it can be in many, many different forms, and you are free to choose your own. And wherever you are in your life, I wish all of you a beautiful journey.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you, everyone else, for joining us today. Like always, before we end, Dr. Ajay, if once again you can make that announcement about when you feel that there is a scope for you to grow further, or you would look for someone's support or support someone's help to be able to get into the right mental state, you will be open to the idea of visiting a mental health practitioner. If you can make that announcement, I'll follow it up with my announcement and then we can end the day.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. We are not alone in this world. So if we are challenged, and if we feel that we are unable to cope ourselves, there are a lot of tools for ourselves to handle things. But sometimes if things go beyond, then I think one should not feel any hesitation at all in reaching out to other people who have. It could be a friend, it could be someone who you trust, it could be a third party like a therapist or someone. And just like we do not hesitate to go to a doctor, I think we should not hesitate to reach out for help, to have this humility that we are all growing and sometimes we need help. I think that's an important thing. So I certainly would do that, and I would encourage anyone to be in that. It's also an act of self-compassion to do that. So thank you, and I wish you well.
Thank you. And for all of you, just to clarify, while I'm in the field, I have my own mental health practitioner that I connect with, I speak to regularly. So only because I'm in this field doesn't mean that I don't need to seek support from someone else. The same applies to everyone else. If you are at a place where you feel that you would like to speak to someone who can guide you, support you, or who can just help you get clarity about what's happening in your life and how you want to proceed from there, please feel free to connect with any of the practitioners around you, and luckily there are a lot of people available now with COVID, a lot of people are operating online, so probably your time in terms of traveling also gets saved. Go ahead, connect with the right person so that you can benefit from this. Thank you, and I hope to see all of you again next week at 7:30, and with another research and another discussion. Thank you. Take care.
Bye bye.